Welcome, everyone, to a brand new week of the Media Row podcast. I'm your host, Justin Miller. As always, these shows are brought to you by Stevens Automotive and Sales and Kelly's Little Nipper. Kelly's Little Nipper over there at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Perfect place because it's great food, great drinks, and even better community over there at the historic Kelly's Little Nipper. When you go there, make sure to use the keyword that you hear on this show. The keyword is Woodley, yes, as in Coach Joe Woodley. You use that keyword and your first drink is on the house. And I'm telling you, I don't think there's a better deal here in this state than over there at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Kelly's Little Nipper, proud sponsor of the Media Row podcast. So, cannot wait to get into today's show. A lot to break down. If you're a fan of the Drake Bulldogs, we got you covered as always, because that was a game, man, may not have left South Dakota with a victory, but with everything that transpired, you don't feel too bad about the performance. If you're a Cyclones fan, you're sitting there going, man, this bye week is going to feel nice. But you're looking at this team, 12th in the country, 4-0, a great start, just need maybe a week to recoup after what was a really tough Saturday against Arkansas State. If you're Iowa, man, it felt good to actually see the offense perform. Congratulations to your head coach. We have a lot to break down with that game and national games as well. A lot to get to in today's show, and we're going to cover all of it here on the Media Row podcast. But before we do, as always, make sure to follow us on all social media platforms. Like, comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. Follow us on YouTube if you like to watch the show, and then listen to us wherever you get your podcast. So let's jump right into it. Let's start with the team that this show was kind of created for in the Drake Bulldogs, as they fall to number 2 South Dakota State on the road, 37-21. And man, it's been a long time in college football that I have watched a team that I cover lose by 16 and leave going, not a bad performance. Leave with actually some excitement, some hope after a tough loss. Because what transpired in that game was a lot of early adversity, and this team continued to push forward. There was adversity before the ball was even kicked. Before Saturday, Drake loses their starting quarterback in Chase Spellman, the quarterback that was named PFL Offensive Player of the Week in Week 1 after the win against Upper Iowa. So they're without Chase Spellman. So they turned to Xavier Washington Jr., a senior who had only thrown 4 total passes in his college career. One of them was a touchdown, but not real experienced under center, having to go to South Dakota State, number 2 team in the country, top 10 defense in FCS, blackout, hostile environment, and you're having to lean on Washington. Well, first drive looked real pretty, and we'll dive into that. But on the third drive, a turnover. So right away, you kind of cringe at a mistake from the offense, but then your gut sinks, your gut turns over because you see Washington still on the ground. Xavier Washington, we don't know the severity of his injury. He couldn't put any pressure on his left leg, was carried to the sideline by the help of a few offensive linemen. Maybe we'll hear an update on his health from Joe Woodley on Wednesday's show, as we always talk with Coach Woodley on our Wednesdays with Woodley. But early adversity strikes, a turnover, an injured quarterback. So you bring in your third string, true freshman, only stands at 5'10", Inagawa. And he did not play bad. Inagawa, 15 of 25, 140 yards in the air, 1 interception that was just slightly overthrown out of the outstretched hand of both, but really got it done with his legs, 58 yards rushing, 1 rushing touchdown. Didn't perform terrible with the pressure that he was under, with unexpectedly having to get put into the game on the road against a number 2 team in the country. Not a bad performance, and he didn't look shaken up whatsoever. And that's a credit to Joe Woodley. That's a credit to Kyle Kemp, which we'll touch on him in a little bit, of just setting up a game plan of improvising and making sure he's comfortable in the pocket. Someone that didn't need any new game planning, that I'm pretty sure Woodley and Kemp just said, continue to do you, is Hank Foley. One touch on him first continues to just impress me. 3 receptions, 54 yards, 1 touchdown. Hank Foley starts the game off with a very similar route that he had in week 1 against Upper Iowa, which is just a simple post route to the middle of the end zone. It was a 31-yard dot from Xavier Washington right in the middle of his jersey as he just blows past 2 South Dakota State defenders. Hank Foley is wide receiver 1 all the way now. He is going to be looked upon as the go-to receiver with his size, his speed, really his ability to move his body. He has great athleticism, as we saw in week 1 and a little bit on Saturday, of just being able to turn his body in ways to be able to hold in passes that are slightly out of reach, that look like they should be incompletions, look like they should be tip balls, and he hauls them in. And just talk about growth. In 2024, Hank Foley, 7 reception yards in total. Not a lot of opportunities, but only 7 receiving yards. In 2025, only 2 games into the season with a brand new head coach, brand new offensive coordinator, 3 quarterbacks throwing to him, 158 yards, 3 touchdowns. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. But usually when I break down these games, I start off with the bad. I'm a guy, if you walk up to me and say, I've got good news, I got bad news, I want to hear the bad news first. That's just the kind of guy I am. But with this game, and how I started off this segment, and it stays true, a 16-point loss to the number 2 team in the country, not a bad performance. There really wasn't a lot I was concerned about after the game. So I'm going to start with the good. And number 1, the resilience of this team. It was something we noticed in week 1. Chase Spellman throws that interception against Upper Iowa. Then they just start rattling off scoring drives after that. Well, week 3, game number 2 for Drake, very similar. They fumble the ball on the 3rd drive. They lose their 2nd-string quarterback. They're without their 1st-string quarterback. They're in a hostile environment. First true road game. Biggest road game environment Coach Woodley has played in or coached in that he had mentioned. And yet they just continue to push forward. That's a credit to the mentality Joe Woodley has set upon these players. It's a credit to the entire coaching staff for just game planning for South Dakota State. Because with all that adversity, this game could have easily gotten out of hand. And that's number 2 on my good section of this game. This game never felt like it was out of reach. I would say about 8 minutes to go in the 4th quarter was the moment watching this game I sat back and went, that's the dagger. I don't know if there's enough luck to bring Drake back with this little of time. But up until the 8-minute mark, I was still sitting there going, 1 turnover, 1 big play away from being right back in this game. And that's a huge step forward to what we had previously seen out of Drake playing against top-tier FCS teams. Go back to 2023. Drake is in Minnesota going up against South Dakota State at Target Field. Drake very similar, scores on a bomb big pass to take the lead 7-0. Vibes are really high. Then South Dakota State, led by Mark Gronowski, just goes on a tear, takes down Drake 70-7. In the last 4 matchups, it has not been pretty for Drake. South Dakota State 215 points to Drake's 55. That could have easily been the storyline with all the adversity, the injuries, the turnovers, the special team errors. And it wasn't. Drake only losing by 16, that feels like a win. And on Twitter, after I did my instant Drake football reaction post, a lot of Drake fans were with me of just, man, that game could have really gotten ugly, and this team just continued to fight. And that's all you ask for. This was a game not a lot of people had hope in Drake. South Dakota State's a really good ball team. And Drake felt like they were in this game all the way. Last note I have down here for the good is just Kyle Kemp. I thought he had a really strong game play calling wise. Let's just start with that first scoring drive. 5 plays, 75 yards, little over 2 minutes. It's a fully 31-yard touchdown reception. That drive showed what Kemp is able to do. Great runs. You had Menzinger, 21-yard rush. You had Washington with a 14-yard rush to just really help set up the drive. You had him dumping down for easy plays, easy passes for Washington, like we talked about on Friday's show, that Kemp was going to have to do for Drake and Washington, of just getting that quarterback into a comfortable rhythm. And then didn't take Washington long to get comfortable because he hits Foley perfectly for a 31-yard touchdown. And he continued to do that when Inagawa was in at quarterback. Didn't put too much on his shoulders. Got Taj Hughes way more involved, which I really wanted to see. If you listened to the show on Friday, felt like Kyle was listening to the show, which maybe he was. He has been a guest on this show before. But I mentioned of getting Taj involved because South Dakota State, the week prior, against Montana State in overtime, struggled against their kind of running back, wide receiver, backfield player. And Taj Hughes is very much so that same sort of Swiss Army knife athlete where he can create plays. So if you want your quarterbacks to get comfortable, boom, easy dump down passes to a guy like Taj Hughes is crucial. So Taj Hughes gets more involved. You had a great running game, just very balanced offensively, and it allowed Inagawa to feel comfortable throwing the ball, to feel comfortable scrambling as he ran for the most yards on the team with 58 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Had a great long sustained drive that Inagawa looked comfortable leading late in the second half. I just thought Kyle called a really good game. And all of those notes, just along with everything that transpired early in the game and even before the game, a lot of hope for this team. And it was kind of a message to the rest of the PFL of, even though there's a lot of turnover, brand new coaching staff, brand new players, Drake isn't going anywhere. Now, I have down in the notes the bad, and I do air quotes, because again, like I've said 1,000 times, there wasn't anything I felt that was blatantly bad. Outside of just the simple mistakes that you're going to see early in the season, that you're going to see from a true freshman quarterback in the turnovers. And then it was surprising to see the special team miscues. The missed field goal at the end of the first half does hurt because, man, you can really try to cut into that lead. And then a few bad punts that just gave South Dakota State good field position. If you're going to beat the number 2 team in the country, those are the little things you just can't give the Jackrabbits. You can't give them extra possessions. You can't give them great field position by messing up punts. And then when you have the opportunity to put points on the board, you need to capitalize. But some concerns that, again, I think they're going to be able to improve upon. The defensive line struggled against the run, 211 yards, 4 touchdowns allowed for the Jackrabbits on the ground. That's a 5-yard average for the Jackrabbits. Offensive line didn't play terrible, did allow 4 sacks. Now, some of those, I think Inagawa held on to the ball a little too long, tried to create a little too much, but still, pocket collapsed quite a bit for Drake. But again, it feels more nitpicking, which is very promising in a glass half full type of guy that I am in a 37-21 loss. This is the number 2 team in the country we're talking about here. And Drake felt like they were in it all the way. So overall, I'm very impressed with what I saw. The only concerns now is just health, getting healthy for this team. Drake will take on South Dakota next on Saturday in South Dakota at 1 o'clock. South Dakota 1-2 losses to Iowa State, as we've seen, and then they lost to Lamar. They did beat Northern Colorado in a tight game, 20-13 in overtime last weekend. South Dakota outside of the top 25 in FCS now after starting in the top 10. So maybe an opportunity for Drake to, kind of make their presence felt. Hopefully you get some guys healthy and get back on the field. Not sure what the update is for Chase Spellman. Definitely haven't heard anything about Xavier Washington, but hopefully we'll get to know more with Coach Woodley on Wednesday. So that will do it for the Drake section of today's show. Let's jump forward now to the other local teams, starting off with the number 12 Iowa State Cyclones, 4-0, pulling out a win on the road against Arkansas State, 24-16. Ugly. And I'll start here. Good teams win ugly games. Iowa State's a good team. They're going to be fine. Cyclone fans, do you really want to keep scheduling these road group of 5 games? I mean, look at what Iowa's doing. They're playing Albany and they're playing UMass. Maybe take a step back from the group of 5. And that's a tough schedule early on in the season for Iowa State. Think about it. Dublin in week 0 against a conference arch rival, a top 25 team at that moment. Definitely doesn't look like a top 25 team now, but a top 25 team at that moment. Then you come back, short week. Then you play South Dakota, look really good at home. Then at home, you have to play a battle, a war, back and forth against Iowa that you pull out. Then you have to go to Arkansas State, and it was like 100 degrees out. I fully understand those are going to play a factor. But with all the factors of who they had to play at the start of the year, going on the road, I still feel like that parent where they say, I'm not mad, but I'm disappointed. For Iowa State over the weekend, I'm not concerned, but I am disappointed. I felt, number one, Iowa State played down to Arkansas State. I've been a Taylor Mauser supporter. I still am. But felt like one of those games trying a little too hard. Trying to do plays that don't fit the situation of the game. And that caused Iowa State to really struggle on third down, which allowed Arkansas State to claw back into the game. Iowa State, 5 of 11 on third down conversions. And to the point of the offense coming out and looking just off, the defense came out and looked flat. Rare missed tackles from this defense. Felt like the quarterback for Arkansas State could just run all over Iowa State. But my biggest issue was just the play calling. Felt like Mauser went away from the run when you're going up against a team that struggles to guard it. Hansen had 1 touch in the third quarter, and I was seeing on Twitter, and I was yelling at the TV of, what are we doing? Get the ball to Hansen. Every time he touches this ball, it's going for about 5 yards, 5 to 6 yards. This is a team you should run all over. Arkansas State allows 200 yards a game rushing to start this year. And I think Hansen needs more touches moving forward. I still believe in Rocco 1,000%. Like I said, I'm not concerned with this team. Just disappointed with that performance. Felt like they really played down to Arkansas State. And to be honest, this team just needs this bye. But Iowa State pulls out the victory 24-16, 4-0, and number 12 in the country. We can complain all we want. It was a win. So good on Iowa State. I'm sure Cyclone fans are really excited. But I'm also thinking they're probably excited to take a deep breath, relax for this weekend. Let's jump into the Iowa Hawkeyes, 47-7 over UMass. First off, congratulations, Kirk Ferentz, all-time winningest head coach in Big Ten history with 206 wins. And the team came out and played with someone that we haven't seen in a while. If I'm going to be honest, I think the team really wanted to get that one for Kirk Ferentz. Now, it wasn't against a high opponent, but the team just came out with a different level of focus and want that we haven't seen in a long time. I think this is exactly the type of game Hawkeye fans needed to see after just a really ugly start to 2025. Gronowski had his best game so far in an Iowa uniform, 2 passing touchdowns, adds a rushing touchdown, 179 yards in the air. The team rushed for 201 yards and then 234 receiving yards. When was the last time Iowa had over 200 yards receiving, you may ask? Well, us at Media Row did some research. Last time Iowa had over 200 receiving yards, you have to go back to week 1 versus Illinois State in 2024, where Iowa had 251 yards in the air. That's a long time, and it's been a while. It's been the same stories we've said over and over again. Weegen, though, player of the game, it felt like, with what do you have, like 100 and some punt return yards, had the return for a touchdown. He's incredible. I knew he was going to be incredible watching him live in the Cyhawk game last year when he nearly pulls off a returning touchdown there to win the game for Iowa in the final 6 seconds. But for Iowa, this is a game you feel good about. It's the game you needed to see if you're a Hawkeye fan, of just, can we have offensive performance? Can we have a product that moves the ball down the field efficiently and looks dominant? And I liked how Iowa didn't take their foot off the gas. It was 40-7, and to be honest, because the Drake game was going on at the same time, I thought that was the final score when I just peeked at it. And the next thing I know, my phone buzzes and I see 47-7. That's what Hawkeye fans want to see. When the game's already out of hand, they want to see this offense continue to put points on the board because they just don't see it enough. They don't see that mentality. And again, UMass is not a great team by any means. So you kind of take these numbers with a grain of salt, but it still doesn't mean it can't feel good to see your team put out that kind of performance. So there wasn't a lot to break down for Iowa. We're going to really learn about this team and what they're made of in the next 7 games because there's 4 ranked teams on that schedule in the next 7. So we'll see how Iowa stacks up against some of the better teams in their conference. Now let's get into the national news. Whew. I mean, 3 games you could easily make an argument for already putting in their vote as the best game of the season in week 3 already. If this is just a teaser for those mid-October, late November conference battles that we always see year in, year out, sign me up. This is going to be a great year of college football. Let's start with, which I put out on a tweet of game of the year, Georgia, Tennessee. We knew it was going to be a great game. It still surprised me how fun it was. Georgia, Tennessee. Georgia takes down the Vols 44-41 in overtime. Let's just start with, aren't those the best games? SEC battles that are just response after response from each team, a shootout. They always are some of my favorite games to watch when I really don't care who wins. Tennessee, Aguilar, really impressive. I mean, he comes out there in that first quarter and looks like Peyton Manning. Only 1 incomplete pass. He was like 15 of 16, had like 200 and some yards, and then they had 3 touchdowns. It was 21-7. And so did Stockton. We said on the show on Friday of, man, all we're hearing lately is how bad this Georgia offense is. Stockton can't move the ball down the field. What does he do on the first play of the game to respond to what Aguilar just did to his defense? Bombs it down the sideline and puts Georgia in 1st and goal in like 2 plays. And it just set up the vibe for the rest of the game. And Georgia just did what Kirby Smart does best. And that is just make adjustments throughout the game. Tennessee was up 21-7, and it never looked like Georgia had blinked an eye. Now they get lucky with that missed field goal that forces overtime. But that's just because I think Georgia and Kirby Smart, when you have a coach like that, you just always have this different kind of mental toughness. Not saying Josh Heupel can't have a team that is mentally tough. I think Tennessee is going to be just fine. I think they're really kind of put themselves on the map now. But Kirby Smart's just done it for a longer amount of time. I saw a stat where he's now won 60 straight games when scoring over 35 points. That's the difference maker I'm talking about. And that's why I was talking about on Friday's show of this is why I'm picking Georgia. Georgia, though, doesn't get much easier moving forward. They have a bye week this weekend. Then they play number 14 Alabama to start a run of 3 ranked games out of the next 4. That SEC, gotta love it. Gotta love how every team, you look at their schedule and you go, how do you get through that? If you get through that, at a little above 500, you feel good. If you're Georgia now, of course, you want that to be different. Second game, the one right after it that could easily have been a game of the year. Notre Dame losing at home to Texas A&M 41-40 because of a bobbled extra point attempt. Now, Notre Dame has a lot to do. Out of the top, or still in the top 25, down 16 spots, number 24. I don't have any issue with that because, man, they've been right there in these games. Just can't pull off the victory. 0-2, still in the top 25. I would love to hear someone argue why a team who lost by a combined of, what would it be, 4 points in their 2 games on the road at number 10 Miami at the time, and then losing to a top 20 Texas A&M team at the last second. I'm okay with Notre Dame still being in the top 25. But that's not the issue Notre Dame has at their hands on if they're going to be in the top 25, if they're not. Their issue is, man, how do we perform to a certain point to impress the college football playoff committee? This is a super easy schedule moving forward. They're going to be favored in every game. Maybe not USC, but we'll see when that game comes up on October 18th. But here's the rest of their schedule. At home against Purdue. They're already a 26.5 point favorite. That's going to be a win. They play Arkansas. Arkansas, not a bad team by any means. That one could be fun. But I think Notre Dame will still be favored. They play Boise State. Boise State isn't that good. You have North Carolina State. They're undefeated right now. I still think Notre Dame's going to be favored. Then they're on the road at Boston College. That's a win. Navy, that's a win. Pitt, that could be an interesting game. Still think Notre Dame wins. Even the interesting games of USC, of Pitt, Arkansas, none of those are going to be enough to propel you all of a sudden into a college football playoff conversation like just one win against Miami or one against Texas A&M would have. A tough slate for Notre Dame and a brutal way to lose at home. Felt like a must-win, and Marcus Freeman and his Fighting Irish let it slip. Final game we're going to touch on today was the game that really set the tone for the weekend. Georgia Tech taking down Clemson 24-21. Clemson, number 12 at the time, now unranked as the new AP poll was released on Sunday. Cade Klubnik struggles. And I know he's without a star receiver in Antonio Williams. I know he's out with 2 offensive linemen. And that's going to cause issues. But if this was a guy that at the start of the season we were told Heisman hopeful, could lead Clemson to a national title, he's not playing like it whatsoever. I've not been impressed with Cade. I've not been impressed with Clemson. But still, they put themselves in a position to win. They, despite all the issues, despite all the times you're kind of rubbing your head at what is Dabo doing? What is this team doing? Cade looks off. They still had an opportunity to win this game. But a lot going wrong in Clemson and going wrong fast. Georgia Tech, though, moves up to number 18 now in the top 25. They kind of have an easy schedule, except for the very end of the season. They're at home against number 5 Georgia, and could be a dark horse to win the ACC now. I don't think they're as much of a dark horse after the performance against Clemson, where the quarterback looked strong running the ball. The whole team looked strong on the ground. They had some really good throws. The defense picked off Klubnik, made Klubnik uncomfortable, took advantage of those injuries that Clemson had going into the game. Georgia Tech really impressed me over the weekend. They were the most impressive team that I saw this weekend. So that will do it for today's show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to give us a follow, a like, subscribe, comment, rate, all that good stuff. And make sure to go check out Stevens Automotive and Sales at 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, Iowa. 35 years of family owned and operated here in the state. Great people, no BS, perfect people to help you with any issue that your car may have. Cannot wait for another busy week. We have Coach Joe Woodley on for Wednesday, and then Friday we'll have our previews and our pick'ems for this weekend. Enjoy your week. Be safe. Enjoy another great weekend of college football upon us, and we will see you on Wednesday for another edition of the Media Row Podcast.